The 10 Covenants, also known as the 10 Pledges in the dub of the anime, the 10 rules that govern the world of Disboard, put in place by the one true god Tet himself, each of them crucial to the overall functioning of Disboard, the world of games, and these 10 Covenants functioning as the game of the world itself. Disboard was created in this fashion by Tet as an overarching game, something that seemingly no one has caught on to until now. Even with that being the case, the residents of Disboard, the 16 sentient races of the Exceed, have lived with these rules for thousands of years, and as such, have learned how to work those rules to their own advantage. Although they seem pretty clearly laid out, there are a number of nuances with them that can be exploited if you are cunning enough and have enough knowledge about them, as well as if your opponent lacks that same knowledge. So in this video, I want to go over the 10 rules that govern Disboard, and also a few of the nuances that are present within them. More will be explored later on as we get more to crucial scenes in the light novel, as there are certain things that are explored by Sora and Shiro to discover the extent that they can actually push the rules, and more that they can learn about the world that they reside in. So this video is going to be more of a basic overview with some of the nuances that we can see in the anime itself. So starting off with rule number 1, all forms of murder, war, and robbery are forbidden in this world. In the English translation of the light novels, it does specify bodily injury instead of murder, and I think murder is the more accurate one, because there are cases where bodily injury is actually allowed under the Covenants. And to give an explanation on that, I'll also need to address rule number 2 as well, that all forms of conflict in this world will be settled through defeat and victory in games, which also isn't exactly accurate, because rule number 2, although it specifies all conflict, there's conflict all over the world. The fact that Jabril gets into conflict with pretty much every other race she comes across, verbally insults them, you can see the hostility in their eyes, there's conflict happening there, but there's nothing to dispute over. They are just throwing words at each other. And in episode 2 of the anime, when Sora is insulting Steph, she goes to slap him. Now, we don't actually see that slap happen, but in fact, it probably could have happened, because Sora knew when he was making that comment that it would piss Steph off. And if he made that comment against someone else in our world where these covenants wouldn't apply, he would agree, most likely, that he would deserve to get smacked for those words. And that's the key. If there is consent, even if it's not like conscious consent, bodily harm can still be done. Steph wanted to smack Sora. Sora probably agrees that the words that he spoke would be deserving of getting smacked, and so Steph probably could have made contact with that hit if Sora didn't actually stop her. So little nuances like that. The actual thing that is forbidden under the Covenants is acts of malice. So if you do any of the aforementioned in rule number 1, war, murder, robbery with ill intent, then that is forbidden, as well as murder and most instances where robbery would occur. So, overall that makes sense, but the specificity of the rules is the acts of malice. So there may be a couple instances that occur where if it happened to other people, it would be disallowed by the Covenants, but since they are two people who know one another, who know each other's ins and outs, specifically Sora and Shiro, they consider themselves 2 in 1, so Shiro, for example, could kick Sora in the shins whenever she wanted to. Even if it was with malice, considering that both Sora and Shiro understand that they are 2 in 1, they essentially consider themselves like one entity in a lot of cases, they can't be apart, things like that. Shiro could kick Sora in the shins, and I don't think the Covenants would do anything about that. Little things like that and nuances with the Covenants themselves. Then we get to pledge number 3, where during games, each player will wager something that they agree is of equal value. And covenant number 4, where that insofar as it does not violate rule number 3, anything may be wagered and any game may be played, even if that's a game that someone thought up on the spot. And even if the rules are completely one-sided, as long as they both agree to it, then it's completely fine under the Covenants. And that is especially true for the wagers as well. So long as in that moment when they swear by the pledges, they agree that it is of equal value, then the covenants will allow it. Meaning that it's pretty much encouraged that you will manipulate things leading up to a very important game so that you can put your opponent at a disadvantage, and they will bet something of higher value for something you have of lesser value. If you can manipulate your opponent and put them in a bad enough position, you could bet your pocket lint for their family wealth. And that is completely fine. That is allowed under the covenants. And this is why Sora always says the game has already begun before we actually get to the physical game stage, because they're playing the mind games. They are trying to get in their opponent's head, and they are trying to manipulate things behind the scenes to put themselves in a better position compared to their opponents so that they can come out on top in the game. And that becomes especially relevant at multiple points throughout the No Game No Life story. But for now, moving on to rule number 5, that the challenged party has the right to decide the rules of the game. And it's fairly obvious why this is put in place. When someone is challenging someone else to a game, it's normally because they want something else from them, and they want to wager something on that game. And so this is to prevent the challenged party from always being put at a disadvantage. They can decide the rules of the game, so they can always choose something that they are accustomed to, and thus not be completely lost in the game and hopefully have a little bit of an advantage. Also to discourage someone from challenging just random people and taking advantage of their skill at a certain game and completely overpowering them. But the nuance with this one is that, again, with the manipulation of events behind the scenes, before a game is even issued, the game itself could already begin, where you can manipulate things, manipulate families with the amount of food that's available to them, or the wealth in a kingdom, or, other things on a grand scale, where it forces someone else to come challenge you for what you have and what they need. And so, if you force someone else to challenge you to a game, well, then you have the rights to decide the game, and you can put them at an incredible disadvantage and take advantage of the situation that way. It takes someone with a lot of foresight and a lot of planning to be able to do this, but, it is certainly possible. And then rule number 6, all bets made in accordance with the covenants must be upheld. And the power of God will force those bets to be upheld as much as possible. Whether you are betting your own memories, your own existence, or falling in love with someone. Now, there are limitations to this, as will be explored later on. Actually, very soon, in Volume 3 of the light novel, something that was cut from the anime is an experiment that Sora does to determine the extent that the covenants can be pushed, and there are limitations to what bets can be made. In Steph's case, for example, she was forced to fall in love, but really it wasn't actual love. The covenants don't have the power to force someone's feelings towards another person. What Steph was experiencing was infatuation with the person, and that, over the course of the story of No Game No Life, eventually started turning towards actual feelings of love towards Sora. At least, so we're left to assume thus far. But still, there are limitations to the bets that can be made, even though the covenants will try to enforce them. Now, pledge number 7, that states that conflicts between groups shall be conducted by designated individuals with absolute authority. And in the light novels, that specifies that they are called agent plenipotentiaries. So when I say that phrase in future reviews of future light novels, because that's the phrase that's used, agent plenipotentiary, throughout all of the light novels, something I've gotten accustomed to after reading all of them, this is what I'm referring to. The representative of each of the nations, as signified by the race pieces that they have. And largely, those are the types of games that we see played. The representatives of the different nations, the groups of Exceed, that are played against one another. The representatives of humanity being Sora and Shiro. And each other Exceed has a representative in and of themselves. But it's not just those representatives that they're referring to. If there is a single parent of 3 kids, for example, that parent would likely act as the representative for the entire family if any conflicts were to arise, things of that nature. But in most cases that we will experience in the scope of No Game No Life, this covenant is pretty much just referring to the agent plenipotentiaries of each of the Exceed. Moving on to rule number 8 now. Being caught cheating during a game counts as an instant loss. Pretty self-explanatory. However, it doesn't forbid cheating. It just says if you're caught cheating, you lose. Well, that just encourages people to get more and more tricky with the ways that they cheat. Especially if they're cheating against humanity when, you know, a race that can't detect magic, if magic is used against them, well then there's no way for the person who's judging the game that's being played to ever detect that it's happening. Because even if you know someone's cheating, you have to be able to show it and prove it. And it is for this reason, as well as a number of the others I specified earlier in this video, that the game that Sora and Shiro played against Kurumi was one of the biggest risks that they ever took. Not only were they forced into a position where they essentially had to challenge Kurumi to this game, otherwise all of humanity would be lost, but they had no way of knowing what cheats Kurumi was using, or at least being able to prove it in the scope of the game to the judge in a way where the game would count as a loss. They went into this game just hoping they would be able to outmaneuver and outmatch Kurumi. But had Kurumi chosen a different game, had things gone differently, had there been more magic involved, things could have gone a different way quite easily. And now we get to the final rule that the Exceed really care about. Covenant number 9, that in the name of the one true God, that's Tet, all of the above pledges are absolute and immutable. Essentially, well, these rules can never be changed. Tet put these in place, and he is saying, by the name of God, these are what is put in place. Now, by the rules just existing in the first place, you'd think that would be pretty self-explanatory, but I think by putting this rule into the overall laws that Disboard operates under, this kind of allows things like memories and things that aren't exactly physical to be bet, because I think this is invoking the power of the one true God, the power of the Suniaster that does hold sway over the entire spirit circuit, and all that that entails. I believe that's why this pledge is specifically here, but, you know, let me know your own ideas down in the comments below. And finally, we have rule number 10. Let's have fun and play together. The rule that is pretty much ignored by the rest of the Exceed, because rule number 9 states that, oh, it's only the above rules, the first 8, that are enforced and absolute by God. Not number 10, that one's optional, so we can just brush it to the side. But that one is the most important of all of them, as that gives the hint as to the overall game that is Disboard. It is a game meant to bring all of the races together, to literally just coexist, to not be in conflict with one another. After thousands of years of war, Tet wanted to build a world that brought the races together. Unfortunately, that didn't work out so well, so he introduced an outside force, being blank, that, well, when put to a challenge, when given a game, they will not back down. And so, his grand scheme, his grand game is coming to fruition. One that we are seeing unfold throughout the story of No Game, No Life. So that pretty much wraps up the general overview of the 10 pledges. Let me know down in the comments below if there's anything I missed, if there's any of the pledges that you have extra insight on or would like to expand upon. There are other moments and other little nuances that I will explain in other videos later on when they become relevant to the actual plot of the light novel, but, you know, let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, if there's anything else that you may have noticed. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, make sure to subscribe to the Daily Flugel for more No Game No Life videos every Wednesday and Saturday. And if you're inclined to see some games played live, make sure to tune into my Twitch channel as well, linked down in the description below. I stream every Tuesday and Saturday. But with that, I'll see you guys in the next video. Ashente.